At 67 years old, Angela Kelly, the Queen's closest confidant and personal dresser, has finally ended her decades-long silence. Behind the palace walls, she witnessed moments no one else ever saw, moments that were intimate, unexpected, and deeply personal. How did Queen Elizabeth really feel when the world's eyes were upon her? How did she endure the quiet, lonely moments during the most challenging times of her reign? Angela's revelations go beyond the royal protocols, stripping away the formal layers to reveal the real woman behind the crown. Stay tuned, as this is the story the royal family never wanted the world to hear. Angela Kelly's journey didn't begin in luxury or privilege. Born in 1957 in Liverpool, she was raised in a council house by working-class parents, her father, a crane operator, and her mother, a nurse. Despite her rise to the heart of the royal household, she never lost her distinct Scouse accent, a proud reminder of where she came from. Long before she became known as the Queen's wardrobe guardian or designer, Angela worked as a housekeeper, far removed from the grandeur of Buckingham Palace. Her life changed in 1992 when she was working at the British Embassy in Berlin under Ambassador Sir Christopher Malaby. That October, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip visited the embassy, and Angela, rather than being starstruck, casually struck up a conversation with the Queen. Mentioning her plans to return to the UK, she never imagined that this simple, polite exchange would open a door no one could have predicted. Just a few months later, Angela received a royal invitation, and by early 1993, she was hired as one of the Queen's dressers. Her dedication and sharp eye soon set her apart, and within 3 years, she was promoted to senior dresser, a prestigious role previously held by Bobo MacDonald. The Queen's lifelong dresser and companion, Angela stepped into the position with determination and grace. But she made it uniquely hers. She didn't just select clothes or arrange fabrics. She listened, observed, and understood. Over time, something extraordinary happened. She formed a genuine bond with the Queen. In a world governed by rigid rules and formalities, Angela quietly defied tradition in the gentlest way. The Queen's trust in Angela grew so deeply that she was eventually invited to live within the palace itself. Angela became essential not only to the Queen's wardrobe but also to her everyday life. In one interview, Angela shared, "I love the Queen and everything about her. She allowed me to get close to her, and she trusted me for a long time. That closeness wasn't mere chance, it was built on loyalty, warmth, and a sharp eye for detail." The Queen, often seen by the public as distant and reserved, found comfort in Angela's dry humor and unmistakable Liverpudlian charm. They shared laughter, quiet conversations, and peaceful walks without any need for fanfare or attention. This was far from a typical employer-employee relationship. Angela became part of the Queen's inner world in a way very few ever could. When she was officially named personal advisor and manager to the Queen, responsible for the royal jewels, insignia, and wardrobe, it wasn't just a formal title, it reflected the deep bond and trust between them. Angela's role extended far beyond choosing outfits. She managed historic jewels, handled priceless royal pieces, and carefully studied traditions and customs for royal appearances abroad. Every outfit the Queen wore carried a message, and Angela ensured that each detail, every brooch, every hat, every stitch was filled with meaning. With Angela's careful touch, the Queen's style became not just elegant but symbolic, always sending the right message to the world. Trust like this isn't something handed over ice, it's something earned quietly, day by day, through consistent dedication. So how did she earn it? To understand that, we need to go back to the very beginning, before any titles or fittings, to see how Angela Kelly became the Queen's most trusted sartorial confidant. To the outside world, Queen Elizabeth always looked flawless, graceful in her pastel coats, standing out in bright hats, and glowing under the chandeliers at grand national events. Yet, behind each carefully selected outfit stood one woman, Angela Kelly. Angela wasn't just picking clothes, she was crafting a message. Every dress, every brooch, and every hat spoke volumes without saying a word. Her role wasn't about chasing fashion trends. It was about weaving heritage, identity, and diplomacy into every stitch. She wasn't simply pulling something off a hanger. Angela had to plan far in advance, sometimes months ahead. If the Queen had an engagement in Kenya in November, Angela was already planning the outfits in spring. Every fabric, color, and cut had to match the event, the weather, the culture, and most importantly, the Queen's comfort. There was no room for mistakes or last-minute changes. Angela later revealed in her book, The Other Side of the Coin, that the Queen's bright colors weren't just personal tastes, they were essential. Queen Elizabeth needed to be visible in large crowds, for people watching from afar, behind fences, or on television screens across the world. Those bright yellows, deep purples, and soft blues weren't about fashion. They were part of a carefully thought-out strategy. Dressing the Queen wasn't only about creating new pieces. It was equally about honoring the past. Angela once shared that she often used fabrics stored for decades, some going back as far as 1961. Rolls of silk brocade and lace tucked away in the royal vault were never left to gather dust. They were given new life. The queen believed in value, not waste. If a fabric was still beautiful and strong, it deserved to be used. This meant Angela had the delicate task of blending history with the present, taking old materials and transforming them into outfits that looked modern, elegant, and fit for a monarch in the 21st century. She did this work with quiet dignity. One of the most touching, lesser-known details Angela shared was how she prepared the queen's shoes. Since the queen often had to stand for hours at public events, comfort was key. But new shoes can be harsh, causing painful blisters. So Angela herself would wear the new shoes, gently walking through palace halls to soften the leather before the queen ever put them on. No one asked her to do this. She just knew it mattered. That simple act reflected the heart of Angela's work, the small invisible gestures of loyalty and care that most people never saw. Inside the palace, Angela's workspace wasn't chaotic or luxurious. It was meticulously organized, almost like a fashion archive. Every outfit was logged with handwritten notes, fabric swatches, and photographs, all carefully labeled to ensure the queen was never seen in the same ensemble twice at important events. Yet reuse was not frowned upon. Angela would often freshen up older coats by changing buttons or adding new trims, giving garments a new life. The queen's wardrobe wasn't disposably devolved, just as her reign did. Angela also described how she would thoughtfully lay out accessories, brooches, and hats, always offering suggestions but never imposing decisions. It was a relationship built on trust and collaboration. Angela wasn't just a designer, she became the queen's closest advisor on public appearance. While many admire Queen Elizabeth's timeless style, few realize the immense dedication, research, and sleepless nights behind every single outfit. Angela paid close attention to every tiny detail, from the precise shade of a pair of gloves to the deeper symbolic meaning behind a brooch, but her responsibilities went far beyond the usual royal engagements. She was present for the truly unforgettable moments, the ones etched in history. One such moment took the world by surprise when it unfolded live on screen. Angela Kelly wasn't merely the woman who curated the queen's wardrobe. She was the quiet mastermind behind moments the world would never forget. And in one of those moments, there were no pearls or brooches in sight. Instead, there was paragliding, James Bond, and a stadium filled with astonished spectators. The world watched in awe as the opening ceremony of the 2012 London Olympics unfolded. Billions of eyes were fixed on the spectacle, expecting grandeur or perhaps clever performances, a legendary musical act by Paul McCartney, or a respectful nod to British literary giants like Shakespeare. But what unfolded was beyond anyone's wildest imagination. Queen Elizabeth II appeared in a specially made film, calmly greeting James Bond at Buckingham Palace. The scene began like any classic Bond film, with actor Daniel Craig, fully immersed in character, striding through the gleaming corridors of the palace. Then, with a swift camera shift, the Queen herself appeared, seated at her desk. She turned and, without missing a beat, greeted him with the infamous line, "Good evening, Mr. Bond." In that instant, the Queen became an unexpected movie star. The scene didn't end there. It grew even bolder as the Queen and Bond boarded a helicopter, soaring over London before parachuting into the Olympic Stadium, her role cleverly completed by a stunt double. Moments later, when she appeared in person in the royal box, the crowd erupted with disbelief and joy. It wasn't just entertainment, it became an iconic piece of history, showing the world a lighter, more playful side of the Queen, one that was modern, witty, and utterly charming. And behind this remarkable moment stood Angela Kelly. Angela had long known that the Queen possessed a playful, mischievous side rarely seen by the public. She had witnessed it in countless private moments and brief flashes of humor that remained hidden behind palace walls. So when director Danny Boyle and his team came up with the daring suggestion of including the Queen in the Olympic opening ceremony, most expected the idea to be politely declined. But Angela thought differently. She championed the idea, viewing it not as improper but as a brilliant opportunity, a fresh, surprising way for the Queen to connect with younger generations. It was Angela's gentle encouragement and confidence in the Queen that made the moment possible, all without compromising the dignity of the monarchy. Angela believed the Queen could carry it off flawlessly, and she did. This wasn't the only time Angela witnessed the Queen's hidden sense of humor. One of Angela's favorite behind-the-scenes stories involved an April Fool's prank she once pulled on Her Majesty. Angela came across a realistic-looking stuffed kookaburra, an Australian bird, and placed it outside the Queen's window. She then playfully told the Queen that a wild bird had somehow flown in and perched there, as if summoned from across the Commonwealth. The Queen, with curiosity, examined the toy bird through the window, keeping a perfectly straight face. Then, she turned to Angela and, in her familiar dry humor, said, "You're joking?" But instead of taking offense, the Queen burst into laughter. That simple moment revealed so much. It showed how Angela wasn't just a staff member. She was part of the Queen's trusted inner circle, a place where quiet jokes, genuine laughter, and personal loyalty thrived. In a world where most would be far too intimidated to tease the monarch, Angela had earned her place as both confidant and friend. Angela, however, could That was the depth of the bond they shared. In a palace where every move is dictated by tradition and protocol, Angela brought a rare sense of comfort. She wasn't merely the one who dressed the queen. She was the person who helped her feel more human, especially during high pressure moments when the eyes of the entire world were fixed on her. At major public events, Angela remained just out of sight, a silent source of strength behind the queen's calm and grace. She ensured that every detail was perfect. The earrings matched the dress, the shoes were softened for comfort, and the hat sat flawlessly. Yet beyond appearances, she helped the queen stay relaxed, often making her laugh right before stepping into the glare of countless flashbulbs. That was the side the public never witnessed. People saw elegance and poise, but not the trusted friend, who smoothed the queen's coat, whispered a gentle joke, and instinctively knew when to step back. Angela did far more than uphold the queen's style. She safeguarded her mood, her memories, and the timeless magic of royal tradition, one precious moment at a time. While the queen's surprise appearance at the Olympics remains one of her most iconic moments, it was by no means the only time Angela played a quiet role in shaping royal history from behind the scenes. There's a lesser-known side to Angela's work, one that no fashion magazine has ever highlighted: how she revived a piece of royal heritage using nothing more than a humble tea bag. In the fashion world, recreating a dress is often routine, but when the garment in question has been worn by generations of royals since the days of Queen Victoria, the task transcends fashion. It becomes a mission to preserve a sacred piece of family history. In 2004, Queen Elizabeth II approached Angela Kelly with a private, yet profoundly meaningful request. The royal christening gown, originally created in 1841 for Queen Victoria's eldest daughter, had finally worn out over the decades. More than 60 royal babies, including the Queen's own children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, had been baptized wearing that very gown. But by then, the delicate Spitalfields silk and Honiton lace had become so fragile that even touching it risked damage. The Queen understood that a new gown was necessary, but she didn't want just any replica. She longed for a dress that would feel authentic, one that honored the past without looking like a modern imitation. And for this deeply symbolic task, she turned to Angela. This wasn't simply about sewing a garment, it was about weaving emotion, memory, and tradition into every stitch and every layer of lace. Angela instantly grasped the emotional weight of the assignment. Having served the Queen for years, she knew how personally significant this gown was. It wasn't just clothing, it was a living piece of royal history. Angela and her team began with painstaking research, studying every detail of the original gown. The lace had to be exact, the silk had to feel right, and everything from the stitching to the fabric's weight had to mirror the original. They eventually sourced lace from Italy, famed for its exquisite high-quality textiles. Yet there was a problem. The lace looked too new, too bright. It lacked the gentle, time-worn golden glow of the original. The new gown risked looking like a costume rather than an heirloom. Angela didn't panic. Instead, she turned to an unconventional solution rooted in British tradition: Yorkshire tea. Using ordinary tea bags, the same kind used for an afternoon cup, Angela soaked the lace in brewed tea, gently dyeing it to achieve the perfect soft, creamy color. The result was fabric that looked aged, just enough to match the original's character while remaining fresh for a new generation. That clever decision to tint royal lace with tea perfectly reflected Angela's nature: thoughtful, resourceful, and always willing to blend tradition with creative thinking. When the new gown was finally completed, it was breathtaking. The first royal baby to wear it was James Viscount Severn, the Queen's youngest grandson. At his 2008 christening, the event itself was modest, but the symbolism was profound. It marked the start of a new chapter where the royal family could continue to honor its rich heritage while stepping into the future. Since then, the gown has been worn by many royal infants, including Prince George, Princess Charlotte, Prince Louis, and Archie Harrison, the son of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Each time the public glimpses the delicate lace and silk, they are reminded of a nearly 200-year-old tradition preserved by Angela's skilled and steady hands. Yet Angela's devotion extends beyond gowns and ceremonies. When the world came to a standstill in early 2020 with the COVID-19 pandemic, life within the palace changed. Suddenly, everything slowed down. When the COVID pandemic brought the world to a standstill, even the grand gates of Windsor Castle closed without fanfare, public events disappeared, royal tours were cancelled, and the usual pageantry faded away. What remained was something far more intimate and human. Inside the castle walls, Queen Elizabeth II's life was reduced to its most basic form. There was no media, no state banquets, only a handful of familiar faces, a few rooms, and an overwhelming silence. And in the midst of this quiet was Angela Kelly. Once the woman who dressed the Queen for dazzling dinners and historic occasions, Angela now found herself in a far more personal role, caring for the Queen during complete isolation. Angela became one of the select few included in what the palace discreetly named HMS Bubla, tight-knit group of around 20 staff members, who isolated alongside the Queen and Prince Philip at Windsor Castle. Though the name sounded lighthearted, the reality was anything but. No one could leave, no one could visit their families. Each person in the bubble gave up their personal life to shield the queen from the threat of the virus. Angela didn't just miss holidays or weekends. She gave up months of her life for the safety of someone she had served with dedication and admiration for decades. Inside the bubble, Angela's role expanded far beyond her usual responsibilities. She was no longer just the keeper of the queen's wardrobe. She became a housekeeper, a trusted companion, and even a hairstylist when needed. There was no extra staff to call on, no last-minute reinforcements. Every task had to be handled quietly and efficiently. Angela herself styled the queen's iconic curls before virtual appearances or the rare official photograph, bringing the same care and precision she had always shown, only this time without a team. Meals were simpler, daily routines were quieter, and time moved more slowly. The once busy palace, filled with the sounds of footsteps and quiet chatter, had fallen silent. Yet in that stillness, a deeper bond formed between Angela and the queen, one stronger than ever before. The two were said to share afternoon tea, sometimes exchanging quiet conversation, sometimes sharing laughter, and sometimes simply sitting together in peaceful silence. They grieved side by side while the world watched from afar. In April 2021, when the queen lost her husband of over 70 years, Prince Philip, Angela was by her side. As the queen faced the heartbreak of losing her lifelong partner, Angela remained a quiet source of comfort and unwavering support. No cameras captured those private moments, but the emotional weight of them lingered in every space they occupied. When the time came for the queen to attend Prince Philip's funeral, masked, socially distanced, and sitting alone, Angela was among the small circle who stood by her in the background, helping her carry the weight of grief. As the world slowly began to open up again, and the HMS bubble dissolved, Angela took a step no royal aide had ever dared before. She shared her story, not with gossip, not with scandal, but with honesty. She penned a memoir titled The Other Side of the Coin, recounting her years alongside Queen Elizabeth II through her own eyes. This wasn't fiction, it was her lived truth. The book revealed personal anecdotes, quiet moments, and private traditions that had never been shared with the outside world. Readers were given a glimpse into the queen's life as it had never been seen before, stories of preparing her clothes, 4 grand events, accompanying her on travels, laughing together over breakfast, or simply sharing silent moments during the darkest days of lockdown. Angela opened a door that had always been kept firmly shut. Angela Kelly achieved the unimaginable. For more than 20 years, she had lived within the queen's private world. But what she did next surprised even the most devoted royal watchers. At 67, Angela broke the centuries-old silence surrounding royal staff. She allowed the public to peek inside the palace gates. And remarkably, she did so not in secret, but with the queen's own approval. Queen Elizabeth II, known for her deep respect for privacy, discretion, and tradition, granted Angela a privilege never before given to a member of the serving staff. The right to write openly about their personal relationship, not after retirement, not after the queen's death, but during her lifetime. It was more than just a nod of permission, it was a groundbreaking gesture. The queen, who had spent her life keeping her inner world private, essentially gave Angela the freedom to tell the story of their friendship, of their shared moments. In doing so, she allowed the world to see, not just the monarch, but the woman behind the crown. The result was a book that sparked global attention, titled The Other Side of the Coin: The Queen, the Dresser, and the Wardrobe. Angela's memoir was unlike anything the royal family had encountered before. It wasn't a scandalous exposé or a sensational tell-all, as one might expect from tabloid culture. Instead, it was something far more rare, authentic, heartfelt, and deeply personal. The book offered the world a glimpse of Queen Elizabeth that no news camera or official portrait had ever shown. It wasn't about the monarch or the figurehead, it was about the real woman behind the crown, someone who shared inside jokes, had firm opinions on how things should be done, and occasionally made spontaneous decisions that left those around her scrambling to keep up. Angela wasn't just a distant writer or an outsider looking in. She was the person who zipped up the queen's dresses, carefully steamed her coats, and made sure each hat sat at just the right angle. She knew precisely how the queen preferred her silk scarves folded. She understood which colors to avoid and the special significance of certain brooches on particular days. Angela even had the unique task of breaking in the queen's new shoes, by walking them around the palace to ensure they were comfortable. But more than handling the wardrobe, Angela understood the queen's moods, her daily rhythms, and those quiet moments when all Her Majesty needed was someone by her side without words. For years, Angela remained an unnoticed presence, standing just beyond the spotlight in countless royal photographs. With the queen's blessing, however, she finally stepped forward to share the private moments the world had never seen. Writing the book, though, was no simple task. The royal family is famously discreet, guided by unspoken rules passed down through generations: never speak, never reveal, never cross the invisible lines. Even with the queen's permission, breaking that deep-rooted silence felt like stepping into uncharted territory, where no one had dared to tread. Angela was fully aware of this. She also knew her openness wouldn't sit well with everyone inside the palace walls. Yet her loyalty was not to outdated tradition, it was to the queen herself. The queen made her wishes clear. It was time to let the world see this hidden side of her life. The book was never just about clothes or ceremonial events. It captured real moments, like the queen laughing uncontrollably over a wardrobe mishap or choosing a piece of jewelry based not on royal rules, but on personal sentiment. Angela shared details that made readers feel as though they were right there in the room, witnessing a genuine, relatable woman preparing for yet another day as the head of state. The public responded with enthusiasm. The book quickly became a bestseller, with readers touched by Angela's sincerity and warmth. But within the palace, not everyone was pleased. Some senior courtiers were unsettled. Even with royal approval, Angela's candor was seen as a break from centuries of strict silence. Whispers began to circulate. Some said she had grown too familiar, while others believed she had been granted too much access behind Buckingham Palace's guarded doors. A few thought Angela had stepped beyond her role, dangerously close to the temptations of fame. But fame was never Angela's goal. She told her story with respect, careful thought, and with the Queen's own blessing. That balance of honesty and reverence is likely what made the book both so powerful and so controversial. For Angela, however, this wasn't the conclusion, it was only the beginning. Because there was still one thing she hadn't revealed, a deeply personal secret the Queen herself had never shared publicly until now. For many decades, Queen Elizabeth II has been known to the world through countless portraits and official photographs that presented her as the embodiment of tradition and grace. These images were carefully crafted: stiff collars, flawless hats, and perfect posture, all designed to reinforce the dignity of a monarch who represented centuries of British history. 2 millions. She was the Queen, seated on the throne, an almost untouchable figure wrapped in layers of royal tradition and ceremony. Yet behind that composed and dignified appearance was another side of the Queen, a woman who longed to be seen not only as a monarch but also as an individual. This side of Elizabeth was quiet, deeply private, and for many years, hidden from the public eye. Angela Kelly, the Queen's longtime dresser and trusted confidant, was the only person who truly witnessed this hidden side of her. In her emotional and revealing memoir, The Other Side of the Coin, Angela shares one of the Queen's most unexpected wishes: the desire to be photographed in an informal way, to reveal a more relaxed and genuine side of herself. This was a groundbreaking idea within the royal context. The British royal family had always guarded its carefully constructed image. Every public appearance, every photograph was staged to maintain a centuries-old image of formality and tradition. There was simply no place for spontaneous pictures or unscripted moments. Yet over time, the Queen quietly wished for something different, an image that felt sincere and approachable, one that could connect her with ordinary people beyond the grandeur of the palace. Angela understood this unspoken desire completely. It was a delicate task, respecting royal traditions while gently nudging the boundaries. And so, she made the decision to act. With the Queen's discreet approval, Angela arranged a private and informal photo session far away from the usual cameras, the royal aides, and the endless attention to detail. In this quiet setting, Elizabeth was seen in a way the world had never witnessed before: relaxed, natural, and unguarded. One of the most striking photos from that day was beautifully simple: the Queen standing casually with her hands in her pockets. This small yet powerful gesture said so much. Here was a monarch ready to show a more human side, breaking free, even if slightly, from the rigid expectations that had surrounded her for so long. That image was more than just a photograph. It symbolized the Queen's quiet act of defiance against the stern role she had been expected to play throughout her life. Angela's memoir is rich with personal anecdotes and little-known stories that reveal the Queen's real personality. Beyond the story of the photographs, Angela paints a picture of Elizabeth's down-to-earth nature, something that often surprises people who only know her from the outside. For example, the Queen held a deep appreciation for the royal archives, which housed decades' worth of fabrics and materials, rather than constantly ordering new items. She often chose to reuse and recycle these stored fabrics, revealing a practical and thrifty side that is rarely associated with royalty. This approach not only preserved tradition but also highlighted the Queen's balanced and thoughtful mindset, one that carefully weighed duty with discretion. Readers were especially touched by the stories about the Queen's sense of humor, including her good-natured acceptance of April Fool's Day pranks. Moments like these, shared by Angela, helped soften the public's perception of the Queen. They revealed a woman who could laugh, who had her own quirks, and who carried warmth beneath the weight of the crown. The public responded with overwhelming positivity. Angela's respectful and heartfelt storytelling allowed people to see beyond the title and the crown, introducing them to a Queen who was relatable, kind, and real. The release of The Other Side of the Coin has opened a new window into Queen Elizabeth's life, a life filled with grace, quiet determination, and moments of authenticity that few could have imagined. After hearing this extraordinary story of the Queen's hidden wish and Angela Kelly's brave choice to share it, what do you think? Has this story changed the way you see the Queen? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to check out the next video waiting for you on your screen.